Hey guys, tonight we're heading back to a time when gods were moody, muses were constantly bursting into song, and sandals were considered high fashion. You'll find yourself strolling through sun-dappled olive groves and marble colonnades, where Apollo, the Greek god of music, poetry, archery, and possibly passive-aggressive sighs, is about to embark on one of his lesser-known adventures. He's had enough of stiff temple ceremonies and incense-scented prayers that smell a bit too much like burnt pinecones. Apollo wants something different. Something with lyres, yes, but also with vibes. Imagine the god of music waking up one morning, immortal, yes, but maybe just the tiniest bit bored. His temples are spotless, his hymns perfectly in tune, and yet, as he stands on the polished steps of Delphi, golden hair tousled by a breeze that probably smells like citrus and destiny, he frowns. Maybe, just maybe, there's more to divine expression than solemn odes and stern-faced priests. What if music could be fun again? You probably wouldn't survive a single day in this mythic version of Greece. The wine's unfiltered, the sun is ruthless, and gods have a tendency to turn you into a shrub if you criticize their taste in tunes. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, drop a comment with where you're listening from and what time it is. Now dim the lights. Maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're standing just outside one of Apollo's many temples. It's nice, sure, white marble, golden accents, a faint scent of laurel in the air. But you can tell Apollo's not feeling it. He leans on his golden lyre like someone stuck in a Zoom call that could have been an oracle scroll. The priests are mid-chant, heads bowed, robes flowing like curtains in a breeze, and yet the god of music looks like he'd rather be anywhere else. Preferably someplace with rhythm. Maybe tambourines. This is the problem with being a perfectionist deity. Everything runs smoothly, too smoothly. His worshippers perform their duties with military precision. Incense offerings at dawn, hymns at dusk. Scheduled compliments about how radiant his hair is. But there's no joy. No spontaneity. Apollo sighs and strums his lyre, producing a chord so beautiful a cicada faints nearby. No one notices. They're too busy reciting sacred poetry. What he wants, he realizes, is a gathering, not a ceremony. Something looser, warmer. A place where people can sing badly without risking divine wrath. Somewhere gods and mortals alike can clap along, tap their sandals, and maybe enjoy some lightly honeyed figs while they're at it. You know, a festival. But this is new territory. The Greeks are big on rituals. Every festival so far involves at least one animal sacrifice and a slightly awkward dance. Apollo imagines something else entirely. Not a blood-smeared altar, but a stage. Not sacred scripts, but song lyrics. The muses humming backup vocals while satyrs awkwardly man the food stalls. And definitely no surprise offerings involving goat entrails. Historians still argue whether Apollo's craving for musical freedom was inspired by his rivalry with Dionysus, or perhaps sheer boredom from listening to 100 odes written in iambic hexameter. Either way, the idea begins to take hold. He floats, yes, floats, over to Mount Parnassus, where the muses like to hang out when they're not inspiring overly dramatic playwrights. The mountaintop is all mist and pine and suspiciously aesthetic sunbeams. Apollo lands gracefully, as gods do, and the muses stop mid-harp solo. "Okay," he says, flashing the T2 perfect grin. "Hear me out." They do, of course. They're muses. Listening is literally their job. But the idea of a music festival is new, even to them. Clio, the history muse, immediately pulls out a scroll. Erido, the muse of love poetry, starts imagining themed tents with soft lighting. Melpomene, the tragic muse, briefly suggests a sorrow ballad corner. Everyone pretends not to hear her. You trail behind Apollo as he wanders, talking animatedly with his divine entourage. He's imagining stages on mountaintops, sea breeze venues, maybe even underwater acoustics if Poseidon's feeling generous. You wonder if there'll be snacks. There are always snacks in these myths: fig cakes, olive tapenade, the occasional confusing cheese. Quirky detail: at some point, Apollo pauses mid-discussion to sketch out ideas in the sand using a fishbone he finds nearby. He draws a logo, an awkward little lyre with wings. One of the muses says it looks like a confused chicken. Apollo pretends not to hear. Back in Olympus, though, not everyone is thrilled. Hera finds the concept unstructured. Athena calls it imprecise. Ares doesn't understand why there's no jousting involved. Apollo assures them all it's going to be divinely laid back, which only raises more eyebrows. Still, no one outright forbids it. Not yet. And so, plans begin. Not written down, exactly, gods aren't big on spreadsheets, but murmured into springs, whispered among laurel trees, and sung absent-mindedly by naiads combing their hair with gold-tipped reeds. The word is out. Something's happening. Something musical. Possibly sandal-optional. Meanwhile, you find yourself relaxing into this world where gods have existential crises and dream of food trucks before such things exist. The air smells like time and potential. Apollo hums a new melody that'll later be plagiarized by a mortal bard, and somewhere in the underworld, Hades groans as the first draft of a festival flyer drifts down like confetti. No one knows quite what's coming, but you do. You're already here for it. Fig cake in hand, you're trailing Apollo again, this time through the clouds of Mount Olympus, where he's pacing a corridor made entirely of moonlight and ego. Something's changed in him. It's subtle, like when someone starts listening to jazz and suddenly uses words like improvisational. The god of music is having, not quite a crisis, but definitely a moment. A golden, harp-strumming, melodically midlife moment. He hasn't said much since the temple visit. Just hums. Long, experimental scales that keep shifting keys. The muses are starting to worry. Even Clio, who once slept through the fall of Troy, has noticed. You hover nearby, trying not to trip over a cloud. It's hard to tell if he's inspired or spiraling. Historians still debate the origins of Apollo's shift. Some say he was tired of being worshipped with the same 3 hymns for 1,000 years. Others blame his sibling rivalry with Dionysus, who had wild festivals basically every Tuesday. Or maybe it's just that even immortals get stuck in a rut. 1,000 years of incense and marble will do that to a god. Apollo, of course, doesn't say it out loud. Gods don't talk about their feelings. But the signs are there. He's started spending longer in mortal lands, wandering market stalls, watching lyre duels in city squares. Once, you catch him lingering at an outdoor puppet show in Corinth. He doesn't even pretend it's for cultural research. He's searching for something. Not worship, not praise. He's got enough of that stacked like unopened mail. He wants presence, connection, maybe a decent beat. He misses the feeling of being part of something alive and slightly unpredictable. This is the god who once flayed a satyr alive for challenging him to a music contest. But let's not bring that up just yet. He's mellowed. A little. You follow him down the golden stairs from Olympus, each one humming softly underfoot. Below, the world spreads out like a painted map. Cities bustling, seas glittering, and somewhere, someone butchering a melody on a homemade flute. Apollo tilts his head. Potential, he murmurs. He lands, no wings. No drama, just a soft shimmer of light, outside a village that probably doesn't even have a name. It's the kind of place where the goats outnumber the people, and someone's grandmother is always shelling something on the porch. A group of kids is clapping in time as a boy plays a simple tune on a bone pipe. It's off-key, repetitive, possibly illegal in some city-states. But they're smiling. Apollo actually smiles too. You watch as he kneels, yes, kneels, beside the boy and gently corrects a note. Just one. The kid stares, then shrugs and plays on. No fainting. No fanfare. Just a weirdly tall man with perfect hair giving flute tips in the dirt. Quirky detail. The village elder later insists Apollo was actually just a wandering goat seller with unusually clean sandals. No one believes her, but she still tells the story at every meal. Back in Olympus, the other gods are noticing Apollo's odd behavior. He misses the council meeting about rain allocation. He skips a scheduled sunbeam polishing. At one point, he shows up late to a prophetic ceremony at Delphi wearing a tunic that could only be described as festival casual. Zeus raises an eyebrow. Just one. Hera mutters something about artistic phases. Athena says nothing, but does make a very passive-aggressive note on her scroll. Apollo brushes them off. Just experimenting, he says. Like a god who just discovered indie theater. He spends the next few days in the woods near Parnassus, building something. Not a temple. A platform. Flat stones, balanced logs, a stage, not grand. Not divine. Just big enough for a few performers. A pinecone or two still clinging to the sides. It's rustic and slightly uneven, and he loves it. You help, of course. Or watch, anyway. There's a moment when you try to hold up a log, realize it's the size of a war elephant, and politely step aside while a dryad casually lifts it with one hand. Acoustics are everything. Apollo mutters, half to himself. I'm thinking open sky, natural reverb, maybe a water feature. The muses gather again. They're intrigued now. There's talk of performance lineups. Polyhymnia suggests a dramatic reading of ancient shopping lists. Terpsichore wants interpretive dance, naturally. Talia volunteers a goat that can hit a high C when startled. Still, Apollo's mood is serious. Not solemn, but focused. He's building something that feels personal, and it shows. There's an energy in the air. Like when you know someone's planning a party, but they haven't told anyone yet, and their house suddenly smells like cinnamon. Historians still argue whether this was the start of performance art in Greece, or just a very elaborate existential distraction by a bored god. But here's the thing, Apollo's never looked more alive. Not during sacrifices, not during prophetic trances. Not even during his famous sun chariot rides across the sky. Here, hammering driftwood into shape and arguing with a satyr about stage placement, he's radiant. You walk with him as he gazes at the finished space. It's not much. A forest clearing, a few makeshift benches, some wildflowers blooming enthusiastically nearby. But it's his. Not a temple carved from marble by mortals hoping for a good harvest. Not a shrine to his divinity. Just a place for music. Now, he says, we just need to see who shows up. The first open mic night on Mount Parnassus doesn't start with fanfare. It starts with a frog. You're perched on a boulder shaped suspiciously like a reclining philosopher, watching as Apollo smooths down a patch of grass with the grace of someone who has never done manual labor in his immortal life. There's no checklist, no program. No sacrificial goat bleeding nervously in the wings. Just a few muses gossiping quietly under a cypress tree, and a cool breeze carrying the faint scent of pine and ambition. Apollo plucks a few notes on his lyre to test the sound. The clearing responds with a soft echo. Natural acoustics, he murmurs again, more to the sky than to you. You nod, trying to look like you've studied this sort of thing. You haven't. Slowly, others start arriving. Not gods, not yet. Just the curious. A dryad who claims she sings only in moonlight, but shows up anyway. 2 naiads with harps carved from river reeds, and an elderly nymph with a cracked tambourine and absolutely zero rhythm. Even a few mortals stumble in, having followed the sound of music drifting from the hills. One of them is a farmer still wearing half a lettuce patch. And then comes the frog. It hops onto a log near the makeshift stage and lets out a single determined ribbit. Someone claps. Probably Talia. She insists the frog had timing. Apollo, to his credit, treats this like any seasoned open mic host would, with a smile, a slight bow, and a gentle, "Our first act of the evening, ladies and gentle creatures." He's glowing. In the way only divine beings and overly enthusiastic theater kids can glow. The muses take their turns. Calliope recites a heroic poem so long that one of the mortals falls asleep halfway through. Clio performs a historical interpretive dance that looks suspiciously like someone reenacting the Trojan War via exaggerated eyebrow movements. Terpsichore's dance includes feathers, grapevines, and a goat that wanders on stage uninvited. The goat receives applause. One of the dryads does a flute solo that sounds more like birds arguing in a wind tunnel. But she's so into it that even Apollo nods appreciatively. That's the beauty of this night. It's not about perfection. It's about trying. About playing music for the sheer love of it. Even if you have absolutely no idea how many strings a lyre should have. Historians still argue whether this event really happened or was later invented by traveling bards, who needed something lighthearted between tragedies. But some say this moment marked the first time divine performance art was shared so openly with mortals. No sacrifices required. No rituals. Just a weird, lovely gathering under the stars. Quirky detail. A satyr tries to perform stand-up comedy midway through and bombs horribly. His jokes involve too many obscure puns about goat hooves and fermented figs. Apollo thanks him anyway and gently steers the show back to music. The atmosphere shifts around you. There's laughter, real laughter. Someone starts passing around a basket of olives. The lyre sounds blend with chirping crickets, and you realize something rare is happening. The boundary between divine and mortal is, for a moment, softened. Apollo looks out over the crowd, if you can call it a crowd, and smiles like someone who just heard his own voice in harmony for the first time. Then it happens. A voice cuts through the night, not powerful, not polished, but pure. A young shepherd steps shyly onto the stage, holding an instrument that looks cobbled together from gourd and string. No one laughs. No one mocks. He plays a simple, halting melody. It's off-tempo, awkward, and completely lovely. Apollo listens. Really listens. And when the boy finishes, the clearing is quiet for a breathless moment. Then applause, light at first, then full-throated and genuine. The muses cheer. The frog ribbits approvingly. Even the goat bleats in what might be admiration. You glance at Apollo. His eyes are closed. He's absorbing it. Not the music itself, but the fact that someone dared to share it. That's what matters. He opens his eyes and nods, almost reverently. "That," he says quietly, "is exactly the point. This isn't Delphi. This isn't Olympus. This is a hillside, scattered with wildflowers and weirdos. And for the first time in a very long while, it feels sacred." As the night continues, more brave souls step forward. A nymph sings in a dialect no one understands, but everyone somehow feels. A mortal couple performs a duet that's more argument than harmony. A satyr plays a beat on a hollowed log that, shockingly, works. Even the muses are surprised. Quirky fringe tidbit. Somewhere near the back, Hermes has shown up, completely uninvited, and is attempting to sell handmade festival merchandise out of a floating satchel. No one buys anything. But he insists he's testing the market. Apollo ends the night with a soft solo. No divine light show, no flashy finale. Just a lullaby, something he hasn't played in centuries. Maybe ever. You don't understand the words, but you don't need to. The feeling carries it. It wraps around the clearing like a warm breeze. As the notes fade, so does the crowd. Mortals wander back to their homes. Naiads return to their streams. The muses stretch and yawn dramatically. Even the goat, now wearing a laurel crown someone gave it, trots off into the night. You remain with Apollo, seated beside the stage. He doesn't speak. Just stares at the stars with that faraway look gods get when they're pretending not to be deeply sentimental. The clearing is quiet again. But something's changed. You feel it in the air, in the way the grass hums faintly, as if remembering the melodies. "Not bad for a first night," he says finally. You nod. "I think the frog stole the show." He laughs. A real laugh. "Don't tell the muses." The thing about music festivals, divine or mortal, is that once you host one, word gets out. Especially if you're a literal god and your musical soiree included a frog with perfect timing, a goat wearing a crown, and at least 3 spontaneous interpretive dances involving laurel branches. The following morning, as the dew still clings to Mount Parnassus like a shy groupie, Apollo wakes up to a new problem: popularity. You're lounging on a rock nearby, chewing on a fig and pretending you're not eavesdropping as Apollo rubs his temples. He's got that look, the same one you've seen on mortal party planners the morning after a successful event. Equal parts pride, exhaustion, and the creeping horror that people expect a sequel. The muses return first, of course. Calliope arrives with scrolls. "For branding," she says. Erato has started writing a romantic ballad about the goat. It's earnest. Then come the woodland creatures. Not just a frog this time. Now it's an entire swamp ensemble. A chorus of toads. A hedgehog who keeps beat with his tail. One satyr shows up with what he swears is a drum kit, but looks suspiciously like repurposed cheese barrels. Apollo stares at the scene. "This is escalating." You glance at the satyr, now enthusiastically beatboxing into a jug. "Escalating is generous." Here's where things begin to wobble. See, the first night was spontaneous. It had that rough, honest charm. But now there are expectations. And worse, performers. Eager, hopeful performers. Dozens of them. One of them, a minotaur with a lute, has already scheduled his performance and handed out papyrus flyers. Another, a mortal girl with a voice like shattered pottery, keeps asking about audition slots. Apollo hasn't even finished building the outhouse. Still, he wants to try. There's something romantic about the idea of a divine music festival tucked away on a mountaintop. So he begins organizing. Lightly. Reluctantly. First task, scouting a proper venue. The clearing was fine for a casual night of goat solos, but now Apollo wants something grander. More, acoustically dignified. So, you follow him on a tour of mythical potential venues, and let's just say, not all of them are winners. There's a cave near Corinth, rumored to make harp notes sound like thunder. Unfortunately, it also smells like moldy olives and is home to a sleep-deprived Cyclops who does not appreciate rehearsal noise. There's a grove on the Isle of Delos, sacred, scenic, and already halfway decorated with seashells. But the tide keeps interrupting performances, and no one likes salty liars. And then, there's the glade just past the river Achilles, where the air is thick with jasmine and possibilities. It's remote, soft-footed, and naturally shaded. Apollo likes it. So does the goat. A venue is chosen. Enter the satyrs. Satyrs, for all their chaotic energy and questionable fashion sense, have one undeniable talent. They know how to party. Unfortunately, they don't know how to plan one. They volunteer to help set up the festival grounds, and within hours the glade is an absolute disaster. They install hammocks where there should be seats, accidentally charm a nearby fig tree into singing backup vocals, and build a bar that leans so dramatically it becomes a local metaphor for bad decisions. One even tries to turn a sleeping dryad into a decorative stage prop. Historians still argue whether this satyr-led chaos was a genuine attempt to help or a cunning ploy to secure better front-row seating. Some even suggest the whole mess was secretly encouraged by Dionysus, who is conspicuously absent, but very much watching. Quirky detail: one satyr invents the concept of the VIP vine, which turns out to be just a regular vine with a rude note pinned to it saying, "No mortals beyond this point." Apollo does his best to supervise. He wants this to work, truly. But every time he sets down a lyre stand, a nymph replaces it with a flower arrangement. Every time he outlines a stage, the satyrs redesign it to look more organically chaotic. You try to help, but accidentally offend a rock spirit by sitting on her cousin. By sunset, Apollo is exhausted. You find him slumped under a laurel tree, eyes closed, plucking aimless notes. "Maybe I'm not cut out for this," he mutters. "You started a musical revolution," you offer. "I started a goat talent show. Tomato, tomato," he sighs. "I wanted art. Harmony. A celebration of music's power to connect us. Instead, I got a cheese barrel percussionist and a satyr drinking olive oil straight from the amphora." You nod. Well, at least no one sacrificed anything yet. Right on cue, a minor woodland spirit appears with a bouquet of pinecones and a worried expression. "Where should I put the ceremonial chicken?" Apollo groans. "Please tell me that's a metaphor." "It isn't. The night ends with an emergency muse meeting where the following decisions are made. No livestock on stage. All acts must register in advance, and Hermes is officially banned from selling festival tokens that are just repainted pebbles. The gods are watching now. Word has spread. Even Hestia is thinking of attending, and she never leaves the hearth, which means the pressure is growing. This little music night? It's no longer little. Still, as you drift off under the stars, listening to Apollo rehearse a delicate melody that somehow manages to drown out the distant sound of a satyr singing off-key, you realize something. It's messy, yes, but it's alive. And maybe, just maybe, that's exactly what the god of music needed. Dionysus arrives, and with him, all notions of structure begin politely dissolving in a puddle of wine and glitter. You hear him before you see him, laughter echoing down the glade like a wind chime caught in a party. A cluster of ivy parts, and there he is, barefoot, grinning, and wearing what might once have been a tunic, but is now more suggestion than garment. Behind him follows a retinue of wildly enthusiastic followers, 2 leopards on decorative leashes, and a portable amphora labeled, "Do not open, you will." Apollo had hoped for a modest, curated event. What he's getting now teeters closer to divine Coachella. Dionysus saunters up to the half-built stage, currently missing 3 steps and an entire side wall, and looks around with the amused expression of someone who has never organized anything sober. "I heard there was music," he says, lounging against a harp that protests softly. Apollo, who is tuning his lyre with the focus of someone clinging to sanity via string tension, doesn't look up. "There was music," he says. "Then it got trampled by two satyrs and an unsanctioned frog choir." Dionysus claps. "Frogs are excellent percussionists." What follows is a very delicate exchange of passive-aggressive divinity. Apollo insists on a refined festival atmosphere, soft seating, lyre solos. Curated food stalls featuring grapes cut into symmetrical halves. Dionysus counters with impromptu revelry, goat yoga, and a concept he refers to only as ambrosia pong. They argue gracefully, with the polished contempt of siblings who've shared one too many family prophecy sessions. You stay at a safe distance, pretending to inspect a menu scroll for the hypothetical refreshment tint. So far, it contains 2 items, honey-dipped olives and, probably, cheese. Eventually, a compromise is struck. Dionysus can host a satellite tent. The phrase is new, the vibe is chaotic. It will feature expressive theatrical experiences, wine sampling, and something called the emotional oracle, which turns out to be just a drunk satyr in a wig offering cryptic compliments. Historians still argue about the true nature of Dionysus's involvement. Some say he was a co-founder of this divine musical gathering. Others claim he hijacked it like a party bus crashing a poetry reading. Either way, his presence changes everything. For starters, the crowd triples overnight. More nymphs. More curious mortals. A demigod duo performing interpretive shadow puppetry. Even a chimera shows up, politely wearing a flower crown and only occasionally singeing the grass. Quirky detail. A flock of enchanted pigeons begin serving as messengers between camps. One delivers a note that simply reads, "Please stop tuning your lyre at dawn. Signed, literally everyone." You walk with Apollo the next morning, watching as he surveys what his festival is becoming. There are banners now, some of them made of actual clouds. A nymph has turned a pond into a mirror stage. Someone built a food stand called Grapes of Wrath that sells fermented fruit snacks. And yes, the goat is back. Apollo sighs, but it's not a defeated sigh. More of an exasperated older sibling who can't quite hate how well the party turned out sigh. "It's becoming something," he mutters. "Something beautiful?" you suggest. "Something loud." To his credit, Dionysus genuinely wants to help. He even tries to organize his side of the festival with a form of loose, wine-soaked scheduling. Improvisational structure, he calls it. Performers sign up by sticking olive branches into a jug. The jug is then carried off by a raccoon with a bell, and no one knows what happens next. But somehow, acts still perform. And the crowd cheers. One highlight. A mortal woman named Lyra sings an original song about heartbreak and wine stains. Everyone cries. Even one of the leopards. Apollo watches from the shadows. He doesn't like to admit it, but the spontaneity, the unpolished emotion, moves him. He writes down a lyric. Just one. Then Dionysus has his own performance. It's not rehearsed. He steps onto the main stage, interrupting a muse mid-haiku, and launches into a wild, rambling tale that might be a myth, might be a dream, or might be something he made up on the spot. There's dancing. There's laughter. At one point, someone juggles flaming grapes. The crowd goes wild. Apollo doesn't smile, but he does stop tuning his lyre. Later that night, the two gods sit at the edge of the glade, legs dangling over a slow stream. They don't speak for a while. You sit nearby, pretending to study cloud formations while absolutely eavesdropping. "Not exactly what you had in mind," Dionysus says eventually. Apollo shrugs. "Not exactly what I feared, either." There's a truce in the air. The tension has softened. The festival isn't perfect. It's certainly not what Apollo envisioned when he dreamed of moonlit music and poetic grace. But it's real. Messy, noisy, occasionally ridiculous, but undeniably alive. You fall asleep to the sound of distant drums, a half-drunk panpipe solo, and a whispered promise from Apollo. Tomorrow, maybe a duet. The duet doesn't happen right away. You wake up the next morning beneath a sky so blue it feels personally curated by the weather gods. The glade smells like crushed grapes, wild thyme, and at least one regretful satyr trying to climb out of a wine barrel. The festival is fully alive now, not just an event, but a living, humming, grape-stained creature with its own rhythms, moods, and scattered flyers. Apollo, however, is pacing again. You find him near the olive grove, halfway through restringing his lyre for the third time that morning. His fingers move automatically, but his eyes are fixed on something far away, somewhere past the hills, past the horizon, maybe even past reason. "You know what this needs?" he says, more to himself than to you. "A theme." You blink. "A theme?" "Yes." He nods, already halfway into planning mode. Unifying symbolism. A guiding structure. Something to bind the experience. You nod slowly. Like the stars? Too vague. Love? Too Dionysian. Goats? He glares. "I'm going to pretend you didn't say that." So the theme search begins. Apollo consults the muses, who offer wildly incompatible ideas. Erido wants longing. Talia suggests puns. Calliope proposes triumph of mortal spirit through artistic expression and existential surrender. Everyone ignores her. Meanwhile, the festival continues to swell. The stream is now lined with glowing lanterns that hum slightly when touched. A group of centaurs has set up a stage near the forest's edge and started rehearsing what they claim is a modern reinvention of ancient tragedy, but with snacks. No one quite knows what that means. Even mortals are taking initiative. One clever potter sets up a "play your own lyre" booth. A child paints every available surface with stick figure renditions of Apollo and a goat holding hands. You're not sure if it's flattery or rebellion. But through it all, Apollo remains unsettled. It's not that he doesn't appreciate the festival. He does. He watches the performances, nods along to new melodies, even offers feedback when asked, gently, which is progress. But he's distracted. You see it in the way he keeps rewriting one particular song over and over again. Changing a note here, a word there, then starting from scratch. Eventually, he confesses. "I want it to be perfect," he says. "Not just pleasant, not just entertaining. I want resonance." Emotional resonance? He shakes his head. Spiritual. Eternal. Something that echoes even after it ends. You look around at the crowds, laughing, dancing, weeping over badly written love poems, and raise an eyebrow. "Are you sure it hasn't already begun?" He doesn't answer. Historians still argue about the moment Apollo's festival became something more than a novelty. Some say it was during this quiet period of internal revision. Others point to the next performance, a duet that wasn't meant to be one. It begins with Immortal, a young woman with a voice like rain at dusk. She steps onto the stage alone, clutching a hand-carved lyre and shaking like a leaf. The crowd is rowdy. Someone in the back is juggling pears. A satyr is asleep on a tambourine. But she doesn't falter. She starts to sing. The song is simple. A lullaby, maybe. You can't tell if it's something old or something made up on the spot. But it hushes the clearing. Even the pears stop midair. She sings of longing, not the kind Erato had in mind, but the quieter kind, the longing for spring, for warmth, for voices that feel like home. It's imperfect and raw and lovely. Then, something remarkable. Apollo steps forward. He doesn't announce it. He doesn't conjure divine light or trumpet fanfare. He just picks up his lyre and begins to play. Softly at first, following her melody, then weaving his own into it. A counterpoint. A gentle echo. Two voices, not battling, not competing, but growing into each other like vines on the same trellis. The audience doesn't breathe. Even Dionysus sits up. You feel it too. That thing Apollo wanted. Resonance. It's not loud. It's not grand. But it lingers, every note, every line. Hanging in the air like dew that refuses to fall. Quirky fringe detail. One nymph is so overwhelmed she hugs the goat, sobbing into its crown. The goat bleats once and then lies down. Clearly done with all of this. When the song ends, the silence is complete. Then, applause. Not raucous, not frenzied, just warm. Long sincere. Apollo bows. The mortal woman blushes furiously, and nearly falls off the stage. He catches her elbow gently. Later, as the lanterns flicker and someone starts a very slow panpipe version of an old battle hymn, you find Apollo sitting alone again. But this time, he's smiling. That, he says, was it. You don't need to ask what it was. You felt it too. The theme for the festival, it turns out, didn't need to be invented. It was already there. Connection. Between gods and mortals. Between melody and meaning. Between frog and goat, perhaps. Apollo doesn't say much else that night. Just hums the duet melody under his breath, like someone tucking a secret into their pocket. The festival has found its rhythm. It's not perfect. There are still goats sneaking into the food stalls. Satyrs who think harmony means yelling louder than the guy next to them, and one deeply unfortunate incident involving enchanted cheese that levitates uncontrollably during performances. But now, there's a beat. A steady pulse beneath the chaos, like the thrum of a distant drum or the gentle strum of a lyre under moonlight. Apollo, having survived his first impromptu duet, walked through the grounds with an air of cautious satisfaction. He's still correcting the occasional pitchy singer and frowning at off-rhythm tambourines, but something in his demeanor has shifted. He's not just hosting now, he's watching it grow. Organically, messily, but undeniably alive. The muses are thriving, of course. Polyhymnia has started a harmony workshop near the Lotus Grove. Cleo is drafting a commemorative scroll that is somehow already over 12 feet long. Talia runs a stage called the Chuckle-Laurel, where mortals try their hand at gentle comedy. Most jokes involve sheep. Some hit, some flop. The audience claps regardless. You pass a mortal child plucking at a lyre made of driftwood and string. She's terrible. Absolutely terrible. But she's grinning like the strings are made of sunshine. And there's something else too. Letters, notes, messages, all of them arriving on the backs of enchanted birds, butterflies, or very ambitious squirrels. They come from across Greece, tiny scrolls scrawled in ink, charcoal, or whatever could be found. Praise, questions, poems, even musical scores. One nymph receives a proposal in verse. She declines it but appreciates the meter. These aren't messages to the gods. They're addressed to the festival itself. As if the event has become a being in its own right. One message reads, "Thank you for letting us be heard." Another simply says, "I cried. In a good way." Apollo reads every one. Now, here's where things get a little weird. A group of mortals forms a committee. You're not sure when or how it happened, But suddenly there's a planning assembly, with meetings, and scrolls, and color-coded tokens that signify performer categories: blue for soloists, green for ensembles, red for acts that involve fire. There are many. Apollo is horrified at first. "They're organizing art," he mutters, as if that's a criminal act. But then he sees something extraordinary. The committee works. They listen to one another. They adapt. They invite all, human and otherwise, to give input. Even a nearby tree gets a say, though it mostly just rustles approvingly when snacks are discussed. Historians still argue whether this mortal-led organizing body was the first instance of public arts administration. Most agree it was at least the first time a goat was officially listed as a co-sponsor. Quirky detail: one mortal insists on introducing festival merch, specifically tunics that read "I got inspired at Apollo Fest." They're wildly popular. Hermes shows up claiming royalties. As evening falls on this new, collaborative chapter, the main stage lights, tiny floating orbs that glow in response to sound, begin to pulse gently. A troupe of mortal musicians performs an original composition. The muses join in, unprompted. Dionysus dances with a wine jug and a tree. No one questions it. And then, a surprise, Artemis arrives. She doesn't announce herself. She's not that kind of goddess. She slips in quietly, a shimmer in the dusk. You see her standing at the edge of the crowd, arms folded, expression unreadable, watching her twin. Apollo sees her too. He walks to her slowly, as if unsure whether to bow, wave, or pretend he's been running a highly successful and organized operation the entire time. She raises one eyebrow. "So this is your music revolution?" He smiles cautiously. It's grown. She surveys the glowing stage, the crowd swaying gently to some mortal love ballad, the goat now wearing a scarf that says, "Headliner." "It's chaos," she says flatly. He nods. "But it sings." She doesn't smile. But she doesn't leave either. And later, she takes a seat near the back and hums along to a mortal song about hunting stars. One of the muses tears up. You're not sure which. By midnight, the festival glade has softened again. Laughter has faded to murmurs. Music drifts like mist through the trees. People curl up under woven blankets and the occasional borrowed toga. You pass Apollo sitting on the edge of the reflecting pool, scribbling in a notebook. Not a scroll, an actual notebook. Bound with soft hide and filled with snippets, lyrics, sketches, fragments of dreams. He looks up as you approach. "I'm thinking next year," he says. "We add a workshop tent." You blink. "There's going to be a next year?" He grins. "There's already a wait list." Morning returns with birdsong, the faint clink of amphora lids being replaced, and someone trying to quietly herd a goat off the lyre stage using a tambourine as a bribe. The festival is entering its mature phase now, still whimsical, still improvisational, but there's an unspoken flow to things. Even the satyrs are starting to respect the schedule, which might be the most shocking miracle so far. Sort of. They still consider "on time" to mean within 3 musical phrases of the intended start. But it's progress. Apollo, fresh from an early morning duet with a nightingale they harmonized in thirds, which made the muses cry, has taken up a new mission, mentorship. You don't see it coming. One moment, he's critiquing harp tuning techniques with Calliope, and the next, he's guiding a group of anxious mortal youths through scales under an olive tree. No divine glow. No booming voice. Just patient, careful instruction. It's slightly terrifying. "Relax your fingers," he tells one boy. "You're holding that lyre like it owes you money." The boy laughs nervously and adjusts. The sound that comes next is better. Not perfect, but honest. Better. Apollo nods. Again. It becomes a routine. Every day, in a quiet pocket of the grove, there's a little class. No performance pressure, no fancy titles. Just music and breath. And that wide-eyed mortal wonder that seems to unnerve most gods and make Apollo feel oddly grounded. He tells you later, as you sip wine and eat a pomegranate seed sandwich you've had worse, that it reminds him why he started all this in the first place. Not for applause, he says, for presents. Meanwhile, over at the Dionysus tent, still a realm of interpretive chaos, a group of mortals has taken to hosting emotion concerts, where people play whatever music matches their mood. One girl plays 3 sad notes on a panpipe and bursts into tears. Everyone claps. One very passionate satyr attempts an 18-minute solo piece called My Feelings, but louder. No one understands it. But someone throws a flower. Historians still debate whether these emotion-based performances were the earliest experiments in music therapy. What they agree on, it was cathartic, if slightly unlistenable. Quirky detail: a minor river god contributes a performance where he literally burbles in time with a flute. The act is titled Hydrologic Jazz. No one knows how to respond, so they nominate it for Most Experimental. Back at the main stage, the festival's newest experiment is a collaborative performance. Muses, mortals, satyrs, and even a bashful chimera all join in. It's called Symphony of Many, and no one really knows what it is until it starts. There's no score, no script, just each participant bringing one phrase, a melody, a line, a rhythm. Stitched together in real time, it begins clumsily, like a cart with uneven wheels. But then it catches a groove. A harp riff here, a mortal's hum there. Dionysus contributes a wine jug rhythm section. Apollo layers in harmony. And suddenly, it's beautiful. Not polished, not divine, but something else, collective, shared. You close your eyes and let it wash over you. There's laughter in the music. There's longing. There's the sound of a goat chewing rhythmically in the background, unintentional, but kind of perfect. It becomes a living memory, not just of the festival, but of everyone who gave a piece of themselves to it. Later that night, by the glow of bioluminescent moss strung across the lyre trees, it's a whole trend now. Apollo sits with his notebook again. You glance at the pages. They're filled not with notes or lyrics, but names. Lyra, the mortal with the trembling voice. Aelda, the one who cried on her panpipe. Philo, the boy who finally hit a clean note after 2 days of trying. Even the goat is listed. Its name is Artemide. Apollo sees you looking and shrugs. They should be remembered. You smile. I thought you were aiming for immortality through music. He shrugs again. Turns out, music is already immortal. It's the musicians who need help. You don't have a clever response to that. So you sit beside him, listening to the fading melodies drift on the wind like dandelion seeds. In the distance, a child sings a lullaby to her own reflection in the pond. A satyr accompanies her with a spoon and a coconut shell. No one laughs. Everyone listens. This isn't just a music festival anymore. It's a gathering, a sanctuary, a reminder that in a world of angry gods and echoing wars, sometimes the most divine thing is a note played slightly off-key by someone who really, truly means it. As the days unfold, the festival begins to ripple outward like a stone skipping over still water. News of the event travels beyond the familiar hills and olive groves, reaching far-off towns and even distant islands. Traders who once considered music little more than background noise now pause, curious. Ship captains whisper about that divine gathering where gods and mortals share songs. Even far-flung oracle priests ask if they might attend next year. You wander through the bustling market square set up near the festival, where artisans hawk instruments shaped like shells, woven reeds, and even fragments of seashells from the Aegean coast. A vendor offers enchanted strings, promising to turn any lyre into an instrument that sings with the voice of a siren. The truth? They're just very well-made horsehair strings, but the pitch-perfect sound is undeniable. Apollo watches this growing commerce with a mixture of amusement and concern. When did this become a trade fair? He asks, eyebrows raised. You shrug. Music is a business, apparently. He groans softly. But it's not the first time he's tolerated the messy realities of mortal life encroaching on divine art. One particularly enterprising mortal attempts to trademark the festival's name, Apollo Fest, which causes a brief but heated debate among the gods about ownership, tradition, and the ethics of copyrights in the divine realm. Hermes, as always, is ready with quick solutions involving winged sandals and rapid-fire contracts that no one reads. Historians still argue whether this commercialization marks the beginning of art as an economic force in ancient Greece. What's clear is that the festival's popularity is undeniable, and that Apollo's dream is morphing in ways he hadn't imagined. Quirky detail: a chorus of frogs from a nearby pond is invited to perform. Their croaks perfectly time with the percussionist's beats, creating a surprisingly catchy rhythm section that mortals dub the amphibian groove. At night, the festival takes on a new character. Lanterns burn low, the air cools, and people settle into storytelling circles around campfires. Tales of gods, mortals, and strange creatures mingle with a gentle crackling of wood. The atmosphere softens, becoming less about performance and more about shared memory. One evening, a bard recounts the tale of Orpheus, himself a sort of proto-musician god, whose songs could charm beasts and even soften the hardest hearts. You listen closely, noticing how the story threads gently into the festival's own unfolding narrative. Apollo smiles faintly at the familiar tale, then glances around the circle. Music, he murmurs, is a bridge. You nod, feeling the truth of it. In the midst of the storytelling, a wandering philosopher raises a question that hangs in the night air. Can music truly capture the divine? Or is it merely a mortal attempt to touch the untouchable? No one answers, but the silence is full of respect. As the festival edges toward its final days, you notice a subtle shift. The performance is slow. The laughter softens. People begin to savor moments, a look exchanged during a song, the warmth of a shared blanket, the stillness after a note fades. Apollo, sitting by the pool of reflected stars, seems content. You realize that what started as an awkward experiment has become something more, a gathering of souls seeking connection, solace, and a bit of magic. You breathe in the night air, heavy with wildflowers and the distant sound of a flute weaving through the trees, and you understand. This festival, this imperfect, beautiful chaos, is a kind of home. With the festival nearing its close, you notice the pace slowing, not just in the performances, but in the very air around you. The sun sets later now, casting long, drowsy shadows over olive branches, as if nature itself is easing into a collective sigh. The mornings begin to blend into soft afternoons where time seems to stretch, like warm honey dripping lazily from a comb. The sounds of the festival mellow into gentle echoes, a distant harp, the soft tapping of sandals on worn stone paths, and the faint murmur of whispered conversations in languages both mortal and divine. Apollo, true to his role as god of music and light, now carries a quiet dignity. His once bright eyes soften into something like contentment, though the occasional spark of his famous mischief never quite fades. You catch him in moments of thoughtful solitude, gazing at the flickering reflections in the water, fingers tapping rhythms only he can hear. At the heart of the festival's final days is a tradition that has evolved almost by accident. The night of silent songs. No instruments, no voices, just the collective presence of those gathered, sharing in a moment of pure, wordless harmony. The idea began when a mortal poet suggested that sometimes the deepest music is the one played in the mind's ear. The next evening, everyone sat in a circle beneath the stars, breathing quietly, feeling the pulse of the earth beneath them. Even the satyrs hushed, which is nothing short of miraculous. Historians still debate whether this was the first recorded instance of what we might now call meditative music, but all agree it was deeply soothing. It was like the festival itself was breathing with its participants, a living lullaby. Quirky detail: one mortal brought a small box of cicadas to add natural ambience, but the insects escaped and staged an impromptu concert on the roof of the main stage. It was considered by many to be the highlight of the evening. As dawn nears, the festival winds down gently. People pack up their tents, their instruments, their memories. The muses whisper quiet farewells, promising to return next year. Though you suspect they may be exaggerating, muses tend to love a bit of drama. Apollo stands at the edge of the clearing, watching the first light touch the treetops. You join him, and for a moment, there's a comfortable silence between you, filled only by the soft rustling of leaves. "Do you think it will last?" you ask. He smiles, eyes gleaming with that familiar spark. "Music always does." And with that, the festival fades into the gentle hum of memory, like the last note of a song lingering in the cool night air. The festival concludes. Stories begin to weave themselves into legend. You find yourself amidst the early whispers of what the event means beyond its music and merriment. Some say it was a fleeting miracle, a moment when gods and mortals touched briefly under the stars. Others believe it planted seeds that would bloom into traditions across the ancient world. Either way, the impact is undeniable. You hear accounts of young musicians inspired to journey far and wide, carrying melodies learned under Apollo's watchful eye. These travelers spread the festival's spirit, transforming isolated villages into hubs of music and storytelling. Apollo himself becomes a symbol of this new cultural movement, not just a distant deity, but a patron of the creative spark inside every mortal. Yet, the tale isn't without its oddities. One particularly strange legend tells of a nymph who, after attending the festival, vanished only to return years later, as a tree that hummed softly with the melodies of the festival's songs. Some swear they can still hear her whispers on the wind. Historians still debate how much of these tales reflect actual events versus poetic embellishment. What remains clear is the festival's enduring imprint on Greek cultural life. Quirky detail: the official festival emblem becomes a mischievous goat wearing a laurel wreath, a nod to the persistent goat mascot who often caused delightful chaos. You watch as local communities begin to imitate the festival's rituals: music workshops, shared meals, storytelling nights, transforming everyday life into a celebration of art and connection. As dusk settles over the landscape, you sit beside a fire with newfound friends, sharing songs inspired by Apollo's festival. The flickering flames dance in time with your voices, weaving a gentle tapestry of sound. You feel the quiet power of these simple moments, how music, laughter, and shared stories can knit hearts together across time and space. The festival may have ended, but its echoes continue to resonate, a soft, persistent melody in the background of history. The seasons turn, and with them come new rhythms, both natural and cultural, that intertwine with the festival's legacy. in the villages touched by Apollo's music. The changing of the seasons is marked by smaller celebrations. Children play flutes crafted from reeds, elders hum ancient tunes, and even the livestock seems to respond with softer bleats and contented sighs. You stroll through one such village during the harvest, where music floats from every doorway. The air is thick with the scent of ripe figs and freshly baked barley bread. A group of women weave floral crowns while singing lullabies, their voices low and soothing like a gentle stream. Apollo's influence here is less about grand performances and more about everyday grace, the music of daily life, quietly shaping moods and moments. Historians still argue whether these seasonal gatherings directly descended from the festival or evolved independently, but the similarities are striking. Shared meals, music that mirrors nature's cycles, and a deep sense of community. Quirky detail: a local baker begins crafting lyre-shaped bread loaves, claiming they bring good fortune to musicians. Whether or not it's true, these loaves quickly become a festival staple. Meanwhile, the festival's rituals seep into the realm of healing and wellness. You learn of a curious practice where music is used to ease ailments, from sleeplessness to mild aches, echoing what some might now call music therapy. A healer in a coastal town tells you how she plays gentle harp melodies to her patients, believing the vibrations help restore balance and calm. It's an ancient practice with surprisingly modern echoes. At night, as the cicadas chirp their repetitive lullabies, you reflect on how something so seemingly frivolous as a music festival could ripple through time and culture in such profound ways. Apollo, of course, remains at the center of it all, a figure both divine and accessible, inspiring mortals to find their own melodies amid life's noise. You feel the gentle pulse of music as more than just sound. It's a thread weaving people together, a balm for restless spirits, and a quiet revolution in how the world listens. As you lie down beneath a canopy of stars, the soft strains of a distant lyre lull you towards sleep, carrying the festival's spirit into your dreams. Time flows onward like a slow river, carrying the echoes of the festival into realms beyond memory. You find yourself wandering through stories passed down by bards and whispered among scholars, tales that blur the lines between myth and history. One such story tells of a hidden grove where Apollo once played his lyre alone, long after the festival ended. It was said that any traveler who entered could hear faint melodies carried on the breeze, as if the god's music had been woven into the very fabric of the forest. Some sought this grove as a pilgrimage, hoping to catch a glimpse of the divine harmony that inspired the festival. Others dismissed it as mere legend. Historians still debate whether this grove ever existed or if it's a metaphor for something more elusive, the quest for perfect music, or perhaps the eternal longing for connection. Quirky detail: an old poet claimed to have found a musical stone in this grove, which emitted different tones when struck at varying angles. Modern scientists might call it a type of lithophone, but ancient observers saw it as a sacred relic. You feel the weight of these stories, how they stretch and fold over time, carrying both fact and fancy. Apollo's festival becomes more than a moment in history. It's a symbol of art's power to transform, to soothe, and to transcend. You imagine the festival's last notes lingering in the air, soft as a sigh, as the world turns once more. The quiet joy of creation remains, even in absence. And somewhere, just beyond the edge of sleep, you hear a faint lyre string vibrating, calling you back to the music. The festival's legacy continues to shimmer through time, sometimes faintly, sometimes vividly, as if caught in the delicate threads of a spider's web glistening in morning dew. You find yourself walking through the ruins of an ancient amphitheater where, centuries later, fragments of Apollo's music festival are said to have been revived by wandering minstrels. The stone seats are worn smooth by generations of listeners, and wildflowers push through cracks, filling the space with a sweet, earthy scent. It's quiet here now, but if you close your eyes, you can almost hear the faint echo of laughter, the gentle strum of lyres, and the soft murmur of stories told beneath starlit skies. Scholars debate whether these revivals were intentional homages or spontaneous bursts of cultural memory, but all agree they kept the spirit alive. You notice carved symbols etched into the stone, laurels intertwined with musical notes, a silent testament to the festival's enduring imprint. Quirky detail. In a nearby village, children play a game called Satyr's Shadow, where they mimic mischievous creatures dancing in the moonlight, a playful nod to the festival's more chaotic moments. As dusk deepens, you sit on the edge of the amphitheater, letting the cool stone press against your skin. You reflect on the festival's gentle chaos, the mismatched rhythms, the awkward solos, the spontaneous bursts of joy, and realize that its true magic lay not in perfection, but in connection. Apollo's dream was never about flawless music or grand spectacles. It was about sharing something tender, vulnerable, and profoundly human. And that, you think, is a song worth carrying forward. The years stretch on, and the festival's memory settles softly into the fabric of myth and everyday life, like a favorite lullaby that never quite fades. You find yourself back where it all began, beneath the whispering olive trees and the warm glow of a setting sun. Those centuries have passed. The essence of Apollo's music festival remains, a quiet reminder of the power of art to bring comfort and joy. As you sit, the gentle rustling of leaves harmonizes with the distant call of a nightingale, weaving a peaceful melody around you. It's easy now to see the festival not as a grand event, but as a gathering of souls seeking solace in song and story. The imperfections, the mishaps, the curious incidents, they all add texture and warmth to the tale, like the soft fuzz on a well-worn blanket. Historians still wonder if Apollo's festival ever truly took place as described, or if it's a beautiful allegory for the birth of communal music. Regardless, the story endures, inviting each listener to find their own rhythm in the quiet moments of life. You close your eyes, feeling the gentle pulse of the music beneath your skin, a soothing cadence that lulls you toward rest. The festival's final note drifts away on the night breeze, a soft echo that lingers just long enough to carry you into dreams. Now, as your body sinks deeper into comfort and your mind begins to slow, feel the gentle embrace of quiet settling all around you. Imagine the soft glow of twilight fading to night, the sky painted in deep indigos and silvers, as the last notes of Apollo's festival gently fade into the hush. Let your breath become calm and even, like a slow river flowing quietly toward the sea. The stories you've heard today, the gentle humor and vivid moments, are threads in a tapestry of calm, woven to ease your thoughts and cradle your rest. Remember that music, whether played by gods or whispered by the wind, has a timeless gift, to connect, to soothe, and to carry us softly into peace. Allow the sounds of a distant lyre, the rustling leaves, and the tender murmur of ancient voices to guide you into sleep's gentle embrace. May your dreams be filled with melodies both strange and beautiful, and your night be as restful as the calm after a perfect song. Good night, dear listener, sweet dreams.